And I'm going to call the meeting to order and ask the clerk if he can call the roll of the commissioners present.
Co-chairman Stephen R. Ucci.
Present.
Co-chairman Michael J. McCaffrey.
Present.
Representative Grace Diaz. Representative Donald L. Lally. Representative William San Bento Jr. Representative Joseph A. Trillo.
Present.
Representative Daniel P. Reilly.
Present.
Senator Maryellen Goodwin.
Present.
Senator Beatrice Lanzi. Senator Juan Pachado.
Present.
Senator David E. Bates.
Present.
Senator Francis T. Maher Jr.
Present.
Delia Rodriguez-Masjoan. Felix Appolonia.
Present.
Francis J. Flanagan. Matthew F. Gunnip. Arthur V. Strother.
Present.
And Ray Rickman.
I'd like to welcome you all to the Warwick City Hall this evening, where we're going to look at the statewide plans, but focus in on the Kent County area. We do have Mr. Brace here to provide us with some updated information, and then after that, we're going to let the commissioners ask any questions, and then anyone in the public who's here can ask questions. I just ask that you sign up in the book over there and say whether or not you'd like to ask any questions or come forward. Good evening, Mr. Brace, and welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. It's nice to be back in calm, cool Rhode Island as opposed to Chicago, where I've been for the last 4 days. And it's nice to see our esteemed minority leaders flanking the two chairmen there. Quite an impressive gathering we have here. I want to go through with you several different things tonight. We're going to go through, first of all, I do want to thank Ryan for doing the substitute for me last night. At the last minute, when I suddenly discovered that I was not going to be unchained from my computers in Chicago, I called him and asked him if he could do last night. So I appreciate that by all means. And I understand you didn't give him too much scars, so that was very nice of you. I appreciate that. We have been trying to give you back your binders, the information that is there, and we have a sheet of all the different things that should be in the binders, and we ask that you just check those to make sure that we have your binder full. And if we don't, mark on that check sheet what you're missing, and we will get it for you on that side. So we want to make sure that your new binders have everything that you should be having in there. We have some more documents tonight that we've prepared, and we have them up on the front desk, and they are available for the public, for all of you out here to get your copies in terms of what you'll be seeing. We'll have some of the images up on the screen tonight too for you, and give you a little bit more information in terms of our website. And we're going to spend tonight reviewing for Kent County area the congressional, state senate, and the state house districts, the proposals that we have right now, so that we can also take a look at one of the questions that Representative Trillo had in terms of Providence County. I believe Ryan gave you some numbers last night, but because his computer was not working, I've got some graphics for you in terms of that. And then the all-important public testimony that we want to have and why we're here. So in terms of background, we have migrated you to the larger size, and we do have that checklist. So just take a look at that checklist and see if we have everything in your binder for you. We have tonight, we have it should say Kent County. Sorry, I pulled these from Ryan's slides from last night. We have the inset maps for Kent County for the House and the Senate district proposals, and we also have the larger plotter size of the congressional district plans that we have around here. So that material is here for everyone's review. Our website, which is redistricting.com, we are getting enormous actual hits of people taking a look at that website. So we're very glad that everybody is trying to take a look. We encourage you to do that and look at the website, look at the material, and leave your comments on the website so we can share them with the commissioners. and we know where your concerns are. And sign up for the website so that you can continue to get updated information. And we have, as you recall, we call them A versus B. We have now called them geography reports. That information, all of that is there. I was going to be presenting some of that tonight in a more detailed discussion, but again, being in Chicago too long didn't let me get that piece done. So we will do that again tomorrow night. Our website, redistricting.com, again, we encourage everybody to be there. Now, in terms of the plans, we have 2 House proposals so far, as of right now, and we're announcing tonight that we will have a House Plan C that we will be unveiling tomorrow. We would have unveiled it tonight if I had not spent an extra day in Chicago. So we will have a House Plan C that will be available and will be up on our website and released tomorrow evening at the Providence, the State House meeting that we're having there tomorrow night. That Plan C does start in Providence, so there's more focus on Providence on that side. So we thought that at least would tie in with tomorrow night's discussion. In terms of Plan A, you have, everybody should have copies of the insets for each of the plans for the Kent County area and how the districts are configured. These are improved maps and new maps to let you see the existing district boundaries in white, and then the color shows you the proposed district boundary in the color of the district. Hopefully these will be able to be read by everyone. Certainly one can then look closely on the website and be able to zoom into any of these maps and zoom into the large statewide map and go down to the neighborhood area. And you can, while the file is big and it may take you a little bit of time to download, you'll be able to go into your neighborhood and see in each of the proposals what has happened to your neighborhood. Plan B is up there. Plan A, if you recall, started in Westerly and came up the west side of the state through Providence and then down the east side. Plan B in the House started in Newport and came up the East Bay and came around Providence and then back down to Westerly. 2 different concepts, and it's important to recognize that these are concepts and one can see what happens when you have different starting points. These are to provide information for people to take a look at and to comment and to react to, and that's why we're very much encouraged by having people at our meetings to give feedback and tell us where they think something is not right or something should be changed. As I said, we will be releasing tomorrow night House Proposal C on that one and have that available on our website also. Our Senate proposals, we have 4 Senate proposals as of right now. Proposal A, again, started in Westerly and went around to the east. And we have the insets for you in the Senate side for the Kent County area. Again, following that same kind of format. Plan B as in boy started in Newport and came around the East Bay first and headed around Providence and then back down again. Again, different concepts leads to different results, particularly when you are at the tail end of that drawing process. So it's likely you'll see differences between those 2. And again, Plan B on the inset. Plan C started in Providence for Senate to give you a different perspective, and it treats Jamestown and Newport differently on that side. So there's different variations, and then what impacts that has when you get into the Kent County area, one can see that also. And then Plan D, again, starts in Providence and comes down the western side first, and then goes on to the eastern side. Gives you a different perspective, particularly down on the western side of the state in South County. And again on Plan D on the inset. We have 4 proposals on the congressional districts. We have the full statewide maps up on the website, and they are there up on the wall with the windows. And we have insets for the Providence area in the 2 of the 4 maps where Providence is split, so that one can see down at the street level what happens in the congressional proposals on that side. Again, we have the existing district up on the website so one can see what it looks like currently and how the state is split, and then how the various alternatives look in terms of the district. So in this instance, it has all of Providence in the 1st Congressional District, but does not include any of the Newport area. On the flip side, Plan B on the Congressional has Newport in and all of Providence, and how far up can you go in order to create the district. These again are Plans A and B, are attempts to see what is possible if you can keep towns whole for the congressional districts without splitting any towns. As I've testified before, you cannot draw the districts to the degree that the courts are requiring us to draw congressional districts in terms of 1 person, 1 vote, where the deviation is next to 0. You cannot do that here in Rhode Island on the basis of whole towns. So we know that we will have to split 1 town at least in terms of the congressional districts. Where that town split is up to people's choices. Certainly we can do it in Providence as it is now and as it has been before. Plan C has that split in Providence. And then Plan D has a different split in Providence and a different way of going up above Providence in terms of the whole towns. Again, variations on the theme to try to give people some idea of what's possible. There was a question by Representative Trillo in terms of Providence College at one of our last meetings last week, and so we have done as Ryan testified to you last night, and I wanted to show you some of the images that his computer unfortunately couldn't allow us to see last night. This is an aerial photograph of Providence College area, and we have placed upon it for each of the census blocks how many people are in each census block. And we can see in the middle of that picture is the Providence College area. There are several census blocks that make up Providence College. The one to the left, 1,873, and the one to the right, 1,372, are your 2 predominantly major parts of Providence College in Providence. So combined, we have upwards of almost 3,000 people. Now, we've done an overlay so that one can see where the existing 2nd Congressional District comes in but doesn't get to the campus and get to the college. And so the college right now is in the 1st Congressional District. And indeed, if you look at the numbers in terms of the congressional districts, currently the 1st Congressional District is low. It is low 7,000 people. So there has to be a balancing. The problem with the college is that it is already in the 1st Congressional District. So we can't really look at pulling it out without doing then a deviation of 10,000 and have to do that someplace else. So we wanted to provide that information for for the commission so that you were aware of how Providence College is impacted by the congressional districts. And we have calculated, as our A versus B or geography reports have, the division of Providence by the congressional district. Providence has 178,000 people in it. Currently, it is split approximately 60% to 40%. So it is not an even split with the 2010 census data. Our next meeting is tomorrow night in the State House in room 313. We will be focusing on Providence City itself. We will release the State House Plan C, as I mentioned, and we will have a closer look at how to interpret the geography comparison reports that compare the existing districts with proposed districts. And with that, Commissioners, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
I would also like to add that John Marion did provide us a copy of his two proposals for the congressional districts, and everyone should have those in front of them at this point in time. Are there any commissioners at this point in time who have any questions? Senator Bates and Representative Trillo.
Kim, you said on the split in the congressional districts,
Yes.
are we required to have those exactly even, or is there a deviation we can use?
In terms of the overall congressional district,
Yes.
the courts have said, as it relates to congressional districts, they need to be very, very equal. And 38 out of the 44 states that have multiple congressional districts have interpreted that in the 2000 line of redistricting as saying we need it down to 0. The deviation being exactly the same or 1% off, depending if you're an odd or an even number, in terms of each of the congressional districts in the state.
So we don't have that same 5% that we could use in the Senate or House?
You are correct. The courts have said that the 5% deviation is allowed for state legislative and state legislative and local redistricting, but they, in their wisdom, have said no, that congressional districts need to be very equal.
Representative Trillo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, I know that we had a discussion regarding this before the opening of the meeting, but I just want to read into the record my frustration with the fact that we do not have all the rep maps done, and we were promised that we would have these maps when we went back to the cities and towns for the second time. We've gone back to Newport County without the maps. Last night we were in Providence County without the maps. We are here in Kent County without the maps. So if people really wanted to comment on the other plan, they obviously couldn't comment on it because the plan wasn't available. I understand your reasoning behind it, but I just want to read into the record that that was part of the reason why we were going to go back out to the cities and towns to give people an opportunity to comment on all the plans. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments from any of the commissioners? At this point in time, we do have a number of people who have signed up to make comments or ask questions. The first one is Marie Hennedy of the League of Women Voters.
And we'd like to ask each person's testifying if they can tell us the chamber or the body that you're testifying about, which plan and which area or districts that you're testifying about. And we'll leave it up here. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome, Marie.
Good evening. I'm Marie Hennedy, President of the West Bay League of Women Voters. I'm particularly interested in the Senate, the state Senate divisions for the town of East Greenwich. By going from one map to another, I ascertained that according to Senate Plan A, East Greenwich would have 2 senators, which we now have. We're used to that. It would be districts 31 and 35. Plan B, however, takes us to the opposite extreme. We would have 4, 33, 35, 36, and 31. Plan C gives us 3, 21, 30, and 35. Plan D gives us 3, 33, 30, 36. The principles upon which I would like to comment about these various plans are outlined in the League of Women Voters of Rhode Island position on standards for redrawing new districts. We believe that new districts should include, as required by federal and state law, substantially equal population, geographic contiguity, and thirdly, protection from diluting the voting strength of a racial or linguistic minority. We believe that redistricting should not consider the political affiliations of registered voters, nor previous election results. And to the extent possible, standards for redistricting, besides equal population, geographic contiguity, and protection from diluting the voting strength of any racial or linguistic minority, to the extent possible, standards should also include respect for the boundaries of municipalities. Secondly, census boundaries. And thirdly, consideration of geographic boundaries, particularly where they would be an impediment to travel within a district. It would seem to me, as an individual, attempting to apply the Rhode Island League of Women Voters principles to the 4 maps presented here tonight, the 4 ways of providing Senate legislative representation to the town of East Greenwich, that geographic contiguity, as well as respect for the boundaries of municipalities, would indicate that Plan A, giving East Greenwich or keeping East Greenwich at 2 senators, would be the preference. Frankly, I don't know who is in District 30, Senate 31, and who's in 35. I get really familiar with that come October of 2008, 2010, 2012, and so on, and I know who currently is my senator and representative in the General Assembly. However, I'm not taking that into consideration. I'm simply saying that a community, the town, in this instance, the town of East Greenwich, where I happen to live, is used to having no more than 2 state senators. And thereby, we observe as well as possible geographic contiguity and respect for the boundaries of municipalities. I hope we can continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person we have to sign up to speak is Lou Raptakis from Coventry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm just here just to add a few more comments. I know I've attended the first two series of meetings, and I'm referring to the Senate districts only. And one observation I just want to make is I've seen Senate Map D just recently. I know when I testified at the last hearing there was only A, B, and C, but the observation I want to make is continuing what Mrs. Hennedy had said. In Map D, you have the town of West Warwick. The original District 33 is almost intact, but West Warwick all of a sudden has 3 state senators. I'm not sure if that was an error where there's a block, a census block coming over from Coventry shaded into the West Warwick area, which would give West Warwick 3 state senators. I don't know if that was done in error. And again, it continues where the town of East Greenwich is broken up into 3 senatorial districts, and that's Map D, which I have a concern on. And again, Map C, Coventry is divided into 4 senatorial districts, East Greenwich into 3. And I think a lot of the comments that were made earlier during the hearings, and I believe one member had stated that we should try to keep the communities on a whole and not divide them. And just my concerns is that some of these maps, especially Map C, where it divides Coventry into 4 senatorial districts, Map D, West Warwick into 3, and then East Greenwich again, 3 in D and 3 in C. It's just something that hopefully the Commission would take a look at.
Thank you. I'm just going to have Mr. Brace comment on what happens when you draw the districts from different parts of the states and how you suddenly get into a dilemma where the lines start to cross municipal lines and communities of interest.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that is indeed exactly what takes place. We have the population data from the Census Bureau that is down at the individual census block, and we are seeking to create districts that meet equal population, but again, the courts have given us some leeway. So the question becomes, when do we use the leeway and when do we not use the leeway? Obviously, it would be nice if all the districts fell in place and they were all very equal down to the individual, if that's possible, while adhering to town boundaries. That is not physically possible. So it is a question of balancing as you go through the state to see what is possible depending upon your starting point. And it's that starting point that really dictates where you end up at the tail end and at any place within the state. And so we tried to demonstrate that with the various alternatives that we've presented to you so that you could see what takes place and where it might take place. It happens in different parts of the state. We do know, as you recall, at the very beginnings of our meetings, the East Bay is underpopulated. That causes an enormous problem in drawing the districts, and it is impacted on where you start. If you start in Newport and come north, because of the bay and because of the water, you're prevented from adding in people that is outside of that area. And so you're ending up, by the time you get further and further up into like East Providence, you end up with all of those accumulated negatives that were starting at the bottom of the East Bay suddenly hitting up at the top. And that poses enormous problems of being either having too much people at the top or not enough people. It'd be nice if it all evened out at the top, but it doesn't, and that's part of the problem.
Thank you. Next we have Michael Isaacs. All the committee members should have a statement that the Michael Isaacs and Mark Swagger, Charles Newton, and Thomas Plunkett are presenting, both Democrat and Republican members of the Town Council and the different town committee for the town of East Greenwich. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you mentioned, this is a joint statement from myself. I'm Michael Isaacs, President of the East Greenwich Town Council, Mark Schwager, who is a former town councilor in East Greenwich, Chuck Newton, who is chair of the East Greenwich Republican Town Committee, and Tom Plunkett, who is chair of the Democratic Town Committee in East Greenwich. We're presenting this testimony tonight as East Greenwich residents. Each of us is or has been an elected official or holds a leadership position in one of our town's political committees. We understand that the redistricting effort can take on political hue, but we are here testifying in a nonpartisan effort to bring to your attention the potential disenfranchisement of our entire community. We have little concern with any of the Commission's proposals regarding the House districts. Proposed House District 30 is very similar to the present district and appropriately combines communities with similar interests. This proposed district would continue to provide meaningful representation for East Greenwich residents in the House of Representatives. On the other hand, the proposed Senate districts are of great concern. East Greenwich is currently part of two Senate districts, 33 and 35. 33 encompasses a large section of Coventry and small sections of East Greenwich, Warwick, and West Warwick. The district's footprint outside of Coventry nonetheless takes in neighborhoods that are demographically very similar and whose interests largely overlap. For this reason, this district works. For many years now, Senate District 35 has covered parts of East Greenwich and North Kingstown. Senator Michael Linehan, a Democrat, held this seat for 20 years. East Greenwich has comprised about 1/3 of the district, with the remainder in North Kingstown, a community with many similarities to East Greenwich. Both communities are essentially suburban. Both communities rely largely on a residential tax base. Both communities share a common border and common major thoroughfares. This district makes sense geographically and encompasses communities with a commonality of interests. Compared to the present districts, the various proposals for the new Senate districts work far less well. Depending on the alternative, East Greenwich would be divided into as many as 3 or 4 pieces, and instead of being represented by 2 senators, we would be electing 3 or 4 senators. But sheer population numbers here cloud the issue. Under none of the proposals is East Greenwich coherently combined with similar communities with shared interests. Neither do the proposed Senate districts reflect the historical, geographical, municipal, or political lines as far as East Greenwich is concerned. We respect the difficulty of the redistricting process, and we respect its goals. Those goals, however, should be as applicable to political subdivisions such as towns as much as they are to racial and ethnic populations. The Commission itself laid out the principles to guide its work early in the history of the Commission. Single-member districts of contiguous territory, as nearly equal in population and as compact in territory as possible. Natural, historical, geographical, municipal, and other political lines. Communities of interest. The balancing of numerous, often competing factors, interests, and legal requirements with the goal of achieving effective representation. We fully understand that when Senate districts are set at a population of 27,000, towns such as East Greenwich, with 13,000 residents, cannot be set aside and have a senator from its hometown. But fairness still requires that we respect and take into account the natural and historic relationships of communities, and whenever possible, link communities of interest when and where they exist. The effect of this redistricting plan is to deprive East Greenwich residents of a reasonable opportunity to elect a senator who will represent our particular interests and concerns in the Senate. It is not apparent that there is great commonality among the communities linked with East Greenwich in any of the Commission's alternatives. If any of these are enacted, the effect is that as a town, East Greenwich will be deprived of fair representation. On behalf of the citizens of East Greenwich, we respectfully request that the Commission take these views into consideration and work to construct a Senate district with characteristics to that of the existing District 35. This was a district that, under the Commission's principles, worked, and it can work again. Thank you very much. And any of us are here to answer questions.
Are there any questions or comments for any of the gentlemen here? Thank you. The next person we'll call is John Marion. Good evening, John, and welcome to Warwick.
Good evening. Thank you. I'm happy to be in Warwick. I want to first off thank you for announcing last night that you'll have an additional hearing next week. I think it's valuable as these plans are refined that the public have that opportunity to give input. So, for instance, we're seeing tonight quite a few people were upset about these Senate plans, and with the anticipation that perhaps next Monday we will see a new iteration of those, I think it's really important that those members of the public who are here tonight have another chance to speak about the new iteration, which will likely be the one that you'll be voting on in a week and a half. What I do ask is that when that plan is released, when the maps are released, that the data that has also been released with these draft plans, the A versus B, or as Mr. Brace is now calling them, the geography reports, be released simultaneously. Because it's essentially impossible to evaluate some of the characteristics of these districts without having that underlying information about those districts. So the same goes for this Plan C. We hope that tomorrow night, not only do we see Plan C for the House, but we see the geography reports right away. And I would echo Representative Trillo's comments about tomorrow night is Providence County's chance to comment on those maps, and the one that starts in Providence County for the House isn't yet available. So we hope actually that it's not just available tomorrow night at 7 p.m., but sometime during the day, so that people who might want to come to testify tomorrow night could download it, take a look at it, and provide some comments. So if there's any way that that is ready and could be pushed out during the day, we'd really appreciate it. As Chairman McCaffrey mentioned earlier, you should have in your packets some plans that I drew several weeks ago. In fact, I think I drew these before the congressional plans that you have before you were revealed. Just a couple of proposals. I spent a few hours with Ryan, who was very, very helpful in helping me do this, and I just thought it would be instructive to the Commission to see what a member of the public, and I am a member of the public even though I represent Common Cause, I'm a citizen of Rhode Island and the City of Providence, what a member of the public could do with what I think is one of the simpler tasks before you, which is these congressional lines. The first plan really just tries to move the line in the City of Providence. And my goal there with this first plan was to move the line in the City of Providence and keep neighborhoods intact. So the second page of the handout, where it zooms in on the City of Providence for my Proposal A, keeps neighborhoods intact. It has Mount Pleasant in CD2. It moves all of Elmhurst Valley, Smith Hill, downtown into CD1. And that line snaked through that part of Providence before, but not quite that way. To Senator Bates's question, this gets not to 0, not to 1, but I think reasonably close, 63 people, 0.0119%. So not quite there. Maybe if you want to get to 0, you've got to move a very small census tract in there, but this is possible. That's what the intention of this is. It's not to say John Marion or Common Cause thinks you should adopt this plan just to show that this is possible. The other plan, B, makes a change very similar to what is before you, where Burrillville is moved into CD1, gives the state more of sort of a vertical divide, and also maintains all the neighborhoods and the neighborhood boundaries in the city of Providence. A few differences from the map Plan A, where Mount Pleasant and Manton are now in CD1. And I believe Mount Pleasant being where Providence College is, and Representative Trillo has asked questions about. So again, just an attempt to see if we could create a map that keeps neighborhoods together and roughly keeps the balance in the number of communities in the state, and keeps the other communities whole and roughly keeps that balance the same. And this doesn't quite get to 63. The deviation is 0.2825%, or roughly 1,487 people. So again, these are just examples of dividing it in Providence. I know the Commission is considering maybe dividing other communities, and that's certainly an acceptable way for you to go. We are not advocating that you have to divide Providence. I think there are very good reasons to divide Providence. It is the capital city, it is the largest city, and so forth, but there may be equally valid reasons to divide other communities in the state. And we'd like to hear a justification, though, we've heard a justification for why Providence is divided under the current plan, any justification for why a different community is chosen if you so choose. So I'm happy to take any questions about these plans or any of the other comments I had.
Are there any questions or comments for Mr. Marion? Thank you. Next, we have signed up to speak Representative Bennett from Warwick. Good evening and welcome, Representative.
Thank you. I have a concern. I'm in a peculiar situation where I live. I am the first house in my district. I lucked out on both maps that keeps me in the district. Any movement north would have knocked me out. I do not have my hometown of Apponaug. I'm born and raised here. I head out towards Greenwood. This is Rep. Trillo's area. And on map B, I do get covered into Apponaug. On map A, I get moved into Cranston. I'm going to let Jeremy Ricks explain the situation because he studied the maps and he knows more about the movements than I do. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. Let's see. I generally prefer the northern borders of Plan B, as it keeps Warwick together, as opposed to having one more district that crosses city lines from Warwick to Cranston. It makes more sense to me to have simply one House district that crosses the border, that being, I believe, Rep. District 19, rather than having 25% or so of House District 20 also crossing the borders. I prefer looking at the lines as they currently are on the northern border, of keeping the neighborhoods of Norwood and Lakewood generally together, and then also coming down the west side of Post Road along the Cranston border, as opposed to crossing over it, and that would be kind of a nightmare for, I can imagine, the people of Cranston as well, because now you have, I believe it's 3 separate areas, and at one point I think you would have to drive about a quarter mile to get from one of the areas to the other because of the way it jumps over the highway and so forth. But looking at the southern border, I do think it's a good idea to have the areas of Apponaug more connected to the rest of the District 20. For instance, the kind of central location, the commercial area, right here along City Hall, from what I understand, used to be more connected into one similar interest based on the district. So if we were to have the House 20 reach down into Apponaug as it is in House Plan A, and perhaps also down into the Arnold's Neck area, then I think that would be based on similar interests. But of greatest concern to me is keeping House 20 continuous in Warwick as opposed to crossing into Cranston. And I speak primarily as a resident of the Norwood neighborhood in District 20, which would be affected by the changes. Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments for Mr. Ricks? Senator Maher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, may we have this witness's name for the record?
Excuse me?
May we have this witness's name for the record? I don't recall you calling his name, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Ricks is his name, Jeremy Ricks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would also like to welcome here this evening, we do have Representative Guthrie, Representative Tomaso, Representative Bennett, Senator Shibley, Senator Lynch, Senator Hodgkins, Councilwoman Wilkinson from Warwick, and Councilman Solomon from Warwick. Welcome here this evening. At this point in time, is there anyone else who would like to speak this evening? Thank you. We'll have Mr. Brace come forward and give us some closing remarks here.
Yes, we are, as I've said, we are moving forward to present as much as possible. We will have the House plan for you tomorrow, and we'll have the geography report comparisons, and we'll see if we can get it up there early in the afternoon. We'll take a look. And we will be having the same when we come back next Monday at the tail end of our going out on the road. We anticipate, we are planning to try to have answers to a lot of the issues and questions that have been raised, and new proposed plans come out at that point in time. They will be there and available probably in the afternoon is what we're shooting for.
Are there any questions or comments from any of the commissioners for Mr. Brace? At this time, Representative Trillo moves we adjourn, seconded by Representative Vucci. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The meeting is adjourned. I want to thank everyone for coming out this evening.